in the comments on one of my previous videos, somebody had asked a question, and it was, his channel was one of them that I can't reply to. I don't know why it works that way, but it's one of the YouTube things that it's not an option to reply. But the question he asked was if I had ever had a regular job. And I've had many regular jobs and many irregular jobs. But, I've been doing this road grading thing for many years now. I kind of like it because it's so different from my normal stuff that I do that it's kind of a break that I get paid to do. So that's good. But before that, I did many different jobs, including I spent quite a few years working at a couple of different motorcycle shops. So I've had factory jobs and assembly jobs and just every kind of job you can think of. But in a way that's good because it gives you a great variety of things that you have some understanding of. Rather than just if you know a whole lot about one thing, it doesn't help you much in another thing. Though a lot of times you'll find that that something is transferable that you wouldn't think it would be. A lot of times things will have things in common with other things. In surprising ways, though. But one of the jobs, I worked for one of the local ranchers over here for a couple, 3 years. What we used to do, I used to fix a lot of fence endlessly and run tractors and stuff and work on a lot of tractors. But that's all good skills to have. But one of the things we used to do is all winter we would log oak that we would then split up to use for fence posts. So when it comes to doing this sort of thing now, it's really comes to me very easily. It's the only thing, when we were doing it was two of us, so it was one guy be on the tractor and it wasn't a big deal. The thing that wears you out is up on the tractor, off the tractor, back and forth. That really is what the exhausting part is. Otherwise, the rest of it goes pretty fast. Just a lot of on and off. It would be nice to have somebody just to hook the chain on. That makes a world of difference. But I learned a lot from that. About falling. How a tree will fall, where you want it to fall, and even pulling them out. Because one of the things, if I use this 3-point bale fork, but I hook my chain high, and that's something I learned from that experience. So your first thought would be to put it on the drawbar, but that ain't the best place for pulling something like this, a straight out drag. Get it up high, then when you tighten the chain up, it transfers the weight to the wheels, so you get better traction. It makes a world of difference. So this thing comes in very handy. And a lot of times if I drop one on the ground, like this one was on another tree, no problem, I could get underneath it, But if I drop them on the ground, it's hard to get the chain on. I can back the forks under, lift it up, pull them out. That works very well. A lot of times I'll do that. If I've got a long tree, I'll go right in the middle, cut it both ways, and chain it. I got double chains here, and I can chain and pull both out at the same time. And this is kind of nice in that it restricts, if you get on the side of a hill, the log can't roll sideways on you. The chains hold it in between here. So this works really well for logging. I use it more for logging than for anything. But what I was going to talk about, like I say, how the things that you learn come in handier later. Like now this chainsaw is my 55 that I've had for years and years, this Husqvarna. And, it's always worked all right. It was starting to get to it was a little harder starting, and I kind of figured, well, I should do something with it. But I was running that Model 51 that I put together out of scrap parts. Well, finally, when I started doing this, I figured, okay, I really want to use the 55. It's got a little more power, a little longer bar. So I overhauled that 55, put rings and seals and stuff in it, and that's made a world of difference. It starts right up real good now. It's got plenty of power. But that's something that I'm not afraid to tackle because of all the years I worked on motorcycles. I understand engines, so all that stuff, it does transfer. So to have, somebody, you shouldn't be afraid to get different jobs. To have, like, I know a lot of people, uh, say people that will do like cleaning rooms in motels or work as a waitress and these sort of jobs. A lot of people will say, "Oh, that's beneath me. I'm not going to do. That's a shit job. I ain't going to do it." You learn something from those kind of jobs. So any job, you learn something. If nothing else, at least you have a different perspective on that job. You'll never look at it the same again. I know I had heard one time about somebody that was cleaning motel rooms, and he said that the worst that you can have is if there's a room where like 4 women have been staying in this room, because they'll make a hell of a mess and just kind of trash the place and not care because that's somebody else's job. That's not my job. Today, that's not my job. That's somebody else's job. Whereas men have been harped on so often by their wives that they leave the room pretty clean, that they're a little more careful about it. But now, like somebody who has worked in a motel doing that, their attitude is going to be different. They know that it's a tough job and they aren't going to purposely make it harder for somebody else. But it's that way, like people who've worked as waitresses, they understand how important like getting tips and stuff is. But so it doesn't hurt to, the worst thing you do is actually get out of school, do a job, never do any other kind of work. That's the only thing you know. In fact, it's better like if people, when they get out of high school, instead of going directly to college, if they do some work in between to get a feel of what the work is really like. I see the mistakes many times where people will decide, okay, this is going to be my career, and they decide only because, not because the job really interests them, but because of the money involved in the job. They'll say, I want to be driving this new Cadillac, so I got to be a lawyer, And most of the time, if people do that, they will hate their life. They will have a miserable existence. So it pays really to do a lot of different jobs. There's no harm in that. Like I say, I've been doing this one. I've been doing now for a long time, but it's because it's so different from my regular work. It's like a vacation for me. But like I say, any job you learn something from. But I've never really had a desire for this career type of thing, because this is my career kind of. This is what the other stuff is just how I can try to make a living. But I'm cutting basswood, and finding a lot of them, and it's nice wood. It's something I want to cut boards out of, but like people have said about people use it for wood carving and stuff because it's a fairly soft, stable wood. So I'm getting a lot of that, but at the same time I'm taking some oak and I'm finding a lot of ash, particularly further back that way. I've still got to go further down, but there's a lot of ash and I could never get into there. Well, I couldn't get it right here either, normally in a normal year because the snow gets too deep. But this year I don't have the snow and I got the frozen stream bed, so I'm going along the whole thing. So, I'm cutting a lot that will be firewood for next year, but it's either I get it now or I never get it, so I'm taking it out of here. But it's going good, but it's certainly work. But like I say, I probably got a month of work here, and if I get time before, because once this spring thaws, I'm done, or if we should get a lot of snow, it would put it into it. But if I get down here, I got another stream bottom by my place, same sort of thing I gotta work on. Not quite as bad as what this one is. This one is real tangled to get in, though I did find we've got a kind of there's a gully that goes up this way that there was a cow trail on, and I've been able to snake them out of there. Otherwise I have to pull them the whole length. But this way I can go right up there. Saves me a little bit of maneuvering, but it is a lot of work. But that's what my life is, pretty much all work.